Yeah, I remember I've mentioned this before. I remember starting out in practice in the late 1990s, and I watched the regulatory agencies pull. Do you remember the first rotavirus vaccine? It was just being given out, and the regulatory agencies pulled it over just a shockingly small number of cases of an intestinal problem that they thought might be linked to the vaccine. It was an oral vaccine, and they pulled it over like around 15 cases of this intestinal issue called intussusception, and recommended that we stop giving it in the clinics, recommended that they investigate further. And ultimately, by the time everything was said and done, there were slightly over 100 cases of this intestinal issue nationwide. Like, I hadn't seen a case related to the vaccine at all. And they ended up pulling it completely from the market. So, I saw the system working well when I first started practice. And somewhere between then and now, it clearly has just completely come off the rails. But, how did that happen? Was it rapid? Was it a slow progression? I think you could make the case that it's been there for a lot longer than many of us realized.
So what's interesting about that story, Dr. Moon, is that my wife and I are both pharmacists, and
Yeah.
my son, who is 22 now, almost 23, born in 2000, he had
Yeah.
interception. Yeah,
Mm.
he had interception, and honestly, until the last few years, and we started networking with the right people, we had no idea that that could have caused it. Our pediatrician didn't tell us. We weren't really taught as pharmacists, and we trusted the system. And we were talking to a pediatrician a little over a year ago, and he was telling us about that vaccine. And I mean, the bingo light went on in my head, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And of course,
Had your son received the vaccine? Is that something he had received? Hmm.
now now
Yeah.
here's what's interesting is, so I asked my wife Janet. I said, hey, Janet, did you know anything about this and in the relationship? And my wife, being a very protective mother, the first thing she said was, no way, no, it's not the vaccine. It wasn't the vaccine. And I just kind of let it go. um, and now she's on the same page that I am, is that we kind of wonder. Now here's what's interesting. We were just talking about this a few days ago. She was like, um, regretful. And it's like, I wish I hadn't done that. And I'm like, well, did he really get the vaccine? And we started. She
Hmm.
says, I really don't know, because the records are kind of incomplete, and we don't
Yeah.
know now. Which is interesting. Here we are. We're two pharmacists that completely trust the system 20 some years ago, and we're
Hmm.
just doing these vaccines that our pediatrician recommends, and we're not really even documenting it like we really should. And neither was our pediatrician. That's sad. That kind of tells you how we are blindly following recommendations.
Yeah, I want to be really clear about two things. I forgot to mention at the outset that as I'm speaking on behalf of myself as a pediatrician, and these are my experiences that I've personally witnessed. I'm not speaking on behalf of any institution or employer or anybody else. I have to say that, right? And then
Absolutely.
and then
Yeah.
two, I have been an advocate of traditional childhood vaccines for my entire career. I have. And I've seen the cases of like pneumococcus, which causes bacteria in the bloodstream, and meningitis just plummet with the introduction of Prevnar and the pneumococcal vaccines. Likewise for other childhood vaccines. So my point here with this is that we clearly have major issues right now with this current shot. And how long has the system been broken is my question. And how far back does that go? And I don't want to have people, we just need to ask those questions. And the fact that we're being stopped from asking those questions, and we're being threatened simply by using some critical thinking and saying, wait a minute, have we been told the truth this whole time? We as physicians have, many of us, listen to these regulatory agencies and to the powers that be really blindly, if you look back, and very honestly, without looking back at the actual studies. The average physician, we just don't have the time to go through every single study. That's as a pharmacist, I'm sure you can agree with that. You just don't. You have to trust the system to some extent. And my only question that I'm asking is how trustworthy is this system? And by asking that question, many of my colleagues have been threatened nationwide for simply asking that question, which should make us all, frankly, terrified as to why that's happening. Science is built on a foundation of questioning. And the minute we have some concern, it's not just our right to ask a question, but it's our professional duty to speak out and say, okay, something is really wrong here.